I will let you finish your text message because I know it is a very important time for you, not only legislatively, but also personally.
Yeah, I have a baby due in about 8 days.
Oh my gosh.
So there's a ringtone that you'll hear that if you see me run, that's because we went into labor. But so far so good.
That's okay. I can vamp if you have to go.
Yes, so, there you go.
That's great. You are one of the most vocal advocates for crypto on the Hill. And I would love for you to talk about what really got you interested in crypto.
Well, so what got me interested in crypto was the fact that other people were interested in crypto. My district, my old congressional district, is largely working class Hispanic, also the largest African American community in Arizona. And the fact that there were young black men and Latino men that were talking about crypto, interested in crypto. I saw them trading crypto. There was even a Bitcoin machine, ATM machine in South Phoenix, and this is a community that was talking about that economy, but you never hear them talking about the stock market. You never hear them really talking about anything else. So for some reason, this community that largely is unfortunately locked out of our financial system through different structural reasons, or just traditionally just not feeling comfortable with it, or for some reason being unaware of it, felt more comfortable working and trading in this world, and which tells me that they're receiving enough information, that they're getting enough interest, that's what it's getting them more involved. I mean, to the point where I saw my brother-in-law, future brother-in-law, and my sister's wedding reception, I think I told you this when we were at last, to try to furiously get in a trade before they started the events. And I was just like, yeah, dude, come on, I got time to concentrate. But this is another Latino man, graduate of West Point, that had a very keen interest in it. And so there was something there that I had not seen as much interest in the past, that I wanted to make sure that we continued. And as a legislator, I think that's your job, right? If your constituents are showing interest in it, then you should show some interest in it too.
And I think you're really touching on something here that's a really important part of crypto, which is that actually this is an incredibly inclusive technology with a really diverse user base. Yeah,
well, diverse. So one of the things that I've seen since I've gotten involved in the Genius Act and kind of negotiating a lot of the Genius Act on the Democratic side, I've been kind of being pushed by what I would describe kind of the more far left side of the spectrum on politics. And these donors and these organizations will call me or text me and saying that I'm just helping some rich white crypto dudes, right? And because for me that doesn't affect me, because I actually know the world and I know the people that are involved in this world. But that's what they try to do. They try to basically generalize it as that. But I've met more female CEOs in crypto industry than I have in traditional industry, whether it's financial industry or any type of heavy industry or any type of business. But I've met more female CEOs in this. I've met more men, women of color that are involved both on the development side, user side, as well as at least at the kind of C-suite level executives. So that is just fundamentally not true. And I think it was just very easy for the haters of crypto to kind of take the Musks and the Mark Andreessens of the world and use them as the scary boogeyman to try to pressure the Democrats not to support crypto legislation. The good thing is that there's a lot of new blood that kind of got into new Democratic blood that got into the Senate this year, especially younger people that just aren't as afraid, first of all, of telling kind of senior members that we're going to go on our own and do our own thinking, and two, just have more familiarity with the issue and aren't going to be as easily bullied.
And you're touching on the partisanship issue, and I would love to hear sort of your take on this. And I think there is sometimes a perception that the Democratic Party is somehow anti-crypto, but I don't really think that a whole party can be anti any technology.
No, and I think in the past, because of, a lot of legislation was kind of caught up by like a couple of senior members, that is how it ended up being. But the Democratic Party has always been the party of innovation and technology, right? I think we may have taken a hiccup in the last couple of years, but we're the people that drove the internet. We're the people that drove social media, drove the changes that really, revolutionized our economy, right? And made us a rich country, and a powerful country too, because they go both hand in hand. And we have the same opportunity right now when it comes to the crypto economy. We can really be the main driver in the world on it, restore that innovation, the brain power, the motivation, the energy all behind that, and also going to set the rules of the road that the rest of the world can actually abide by, that benefits both us, the industry, but the rest of the world. And this isn't something new, right? If you see it, in the mid-century, when we joined with the Bretton Woods Accord, we essentially started the modern financial sector, and we had the whole world agreeing onto our playbook. And because of that, there's a reason why New York City and America is still a major, financial superpower compared to other parts of the world, because we set the rules early enough that we benefited from it. So why wouldn't we do that for this industry, right? Why wouldn't we want to have a first movers competitive advantage in the United States? Bring that money, bring those people, bring that brain power, bring the business here, and dominate it for the next century like we did with the financial markets. It's dumb for us not to think about it that way. Because, by the way, as you know, they're already thinking about it that way, right? If you see what's happening in Europe, what's happening in London, what's happening in Singapore, they're seeing the opportunity that we're not taking advantage of right now.
And, on that point, I think I would love to hear, some of your experiences in really being heavily involved in the stablecoin bill, and really why you see that as important, and what, where we are in that process.
Spent a lot of time, long time on this. I'm not an expert on crypto or blockchain, right? I'm dangerous enough to know enough. But I do know relationships, and I do know how to negotiate. And being, number one, being from Arizona, where you have to, if you want to get anything done, you have to deal with the Republican legislature when I was in the legislature. Number two, I grew up in a household of 4 Latina women. I better learn how to negotiate, or else I'm a dead man. So getting to the Senate and dealing with, a lot of personalities, when negotiating the Genius Act, has not been, it's not been that hard, but it's definitely been interesting. The most important thing that I've been trying to communicate to my colleagues, both on the House and the Senate side, is that, the goal is to have a good product. It doesn't have to be a perfect product, right? No legislation is ever perfect, and no foundational legislation that we've ever passed, by the way, in this country has ever been perfect. If you even look at the Bill of Rights, it's not like we just ended with those 10 amendments, right? We've said, oh yeah, well, we have to continue. This country is growing. We're going to add more amendments as to adjust to the times and to the nature of the world. And the same thing, I think, happens with legislation. So I've been trying to, focus, especially in negotiations, both sides, on understanding that and we may not get too perfect, but we should aim for near perfection as possible. And with the end goal of having a good product that we could be proud of, and leaning on experts in the industry and leaning on experts in other areas, right? For the anti-money laundering community, we talked a lot to the traditional financial sector also, because they have some very good viewpoints. We talked to consumer protection, and then we bring that all in and try to figure out how can you have a very good bill that, number one, and not in this is important order, but just the order that I think about things, or in general, it's like, number one, that is going to drive innovation, but bring safety and consumer protection to the consumer without strangling a very emerging technology and emerging industry. And if you look at that, if you look at where the Genius Act is. With the amendments we're bringing in, it is a good balance of the needs of everyone that was involved in this bill, where are we at right now? With a lot of work, and really, I got to give shout outs to on the Democrat side, Senator Gillibrand, Warner, and also Brooks, because we were in rooms for hours and hours on end. And like, I don't know if you guys watch like all those political shows, right? And like you see like these politicians in a room negotiating for hours and hours on end. That shit doesn't actually really happen. That's not real. What really happens is you send your staff into the room and they negotiate for hours and hours on end, and then they come to you and they hand you a paper, you pretend to read it, and then they say, okay, good enough, and then they go back, and then they ask them again, was this good enough? They're like, no. I'm like, well, then go back until they come back and say, was it good enough? Then it's good enough, right? No, this actually really did happen. We sat in the room and we negotiated like line by line, like where we were and what language we needed. And that rarely happens. But because we wanted to have a good product for the American public, we did it. And, the Republicans have now, we had a hiccup at the beginning, and I'm sure some of you guys saw where I was a culprit. I led the Democrats to slow the bill down because they weren't listening to us. And we slowed it down and they came back to the table. And as of what I have seen so far, they have been honoring everything that we have agreed to. On every step of the way, they have been showing that they have been honest with their word. And as this continues, if they keep showing that, you're going to have a very strong showing. You're going to have a lot of Democrats, not just 60, but I think potentially into 70 Senate votes altogether to get there, because I think this has been a very, very good process. Where we're looking at right now, I think everyone's gone, right? The session's out this week, but I think you'll see some movement, if I had to guess, some point next week.
It's extraordinary to hear about, you and others actually being in the room for hours negotiating. I guess for you personally, and maybe for your colleagues, the other senators in those rooms, what was it about the bill that made you willing to do that?
Well, by nature, I'm very stubborn. And I actually like winning, which is stupid in the sense that, because I try to win at like things that I shouldn't even, when you're very competitive, like, I'm the kind of person that will make something into a competition that shouldn't be a competition, and which is not great when you're raising kids, just FYI, guys. And I think what happened was, like, I really wanted to bring a good product to the floor. I really wanted to make sure I owed my constituents an opportunity to have a say in this. I think what jarred me to be more intensely invested was, number one, where I did think there was a power play that was done by the Republicans, and I get along great with them, but I think there was a power play done with them where they tried to jam us with a product that I think, and a bill that I think was just not quite there, and in a bill that I didn't believe was going to get them to the 60 vote threshold they needed. It would have gotten them 57, 58, but not to the point where this bill was going to pass, and it was going to potentially set back, I would say, this type of legislation for years. And the fact that they tried to jam me got me competitive, and then, when I started getting pressured by other people on my own side to kind of abandon the effort and or tank it, that also kind of made me have more resolve, because the challenge they were telling me was that you can't actually have a good product that's going to come out of this that will be able to do all the things you're saying and still be able to hold both the industry and kind of the consumer protection kind of section of voters and the senators that care about that together. And so it was my contention that we can do all that. And I think that's what we're going to hit. That's where we're going to land on.
Well, I know it's not done yet, but
It's not done.
But on behalf of the industry, thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sitting in those rooms for all those hours. I mean, truly, this is such an important moment in time for crypto legislation. I know a lot of us in this room have been working on crypto policy for 10 years and, really did not envision this day coming. So thank you. I'd love to talk a little bit more about market structure. Another really important bill that I think is absolutely, in my view, existential for the future of this technology. So I'd love to hear your view on the forthcoming market structure legislation.
The legislation is important as much as the process, because we have a condensed schedule, and for those that don't know, like, Senate doesn't really move fast, and I'm talking not just physically, but like legislatively, they just don't move fast, right? And because of the way the rules of the Senate are, and you can't just change it, right? I think a lot of y'all come from the tech world where, like, move fast, break things, figure it out later, and you move too fast in the Senate, you break hips, like. But yeah, so you're trying to bring a technology and the new legal paradigm that entails, and you're trying to fit it into something was designed, essentially since the early 1800s, and then you're trying to get it out, right? So in order for market structure to move fast, since it's going to be largely based off legislation from the House product has to be strong. The House product, the bill, the underlying language has to be strong and has to be as tight as possible, because by the time it gets to us, we don't want to be starting from square one. I don't want to be in that room negotiating again, because by then I'll have third kid. Don't have time for that. But the tighter it is, the easier it is for us to get into that room, work on the final words, tighten up the language, and then potentially slap it together and move it. Now, the looser it is, with the more holes it has, then you're going to have the opponents of crypto trying to destroy it. Because if we get stablecoin patch, which I think we will, the next thing they're going to focus on is market structure, because they know that there really is no use. Not there's not any use, but it's just the significant portion of movement is going to happen once market structure is there. So by killing market structure, which is harder overall, or slowing it down, they could still have their end result. So my only message to French Hill, and French and I have served together in the House, is a good guy too. It's like, make it tight, and the other thing is be patient. Right? I think there's some wants from the industry. I know Marta and I talked about this, like, get this done by August 1st. I'm like, okay, cool. So you want this done. Reconciliation bill is also moving. We also have to deal with all the confirmations. And I think, wanting to push something fast could end up with a result of not getting enough votes to pass it, versus doing this in a proper way, in a tight way. We'll make sure and assurance that it passes. And I think it passes by stronger numbers. But if we move too fast with a shitty product, then you're going to have a shitty vote. That's my concern.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. And I think overall, big picture, timing-wise, I'm curious about your view on this. My view and my message to the industry has been, I think that market structure has to happen this year, and that is existential for the industry. In my view, next year with midterms, unlikely anything's going to move after the end of the year. Who knows what happens in the midterms? And then, frankly, I think very likely, or at least completely possible, that the next administration, we have a huge backlash against crypto, and we have another Gensler situation. What's your view on sort of the end of year as an sort of very necessary deadline for the industry?
Well, I would say it's probably a very doable deadline, more importantly. That works a lot with the legislative calendar, schedule, everything else we got going on. Like, I don't think, just to put kind of my marker down, I don't think the world is going to go back. Let's say we have a change of administration in 4 years that is from my party. The days of the anti-crypto bureaucracy, I think, are gone. I think there's a lot of lessons learned. I think the next president is likely, he or she is going to be younger. I think they're going to be bringing in a lot of staff from all over the country and world. They're not going to be entirely dependent from a couple senators and their expertise. And because of that, I think there's going to be a different attitude towards the industry. But nobody likes waiting for anything, right? And I absolutely understand that. And some funky stuff happens in election season, especially if my general viewpoint is like things just basically start slowing down around March once all these Democrats and Republicans are done with their primaries. So I would say that the ideal time would be sometime get it done before March, essentially, and that'll give it plenty of time to get done, sign the law, and moved on. But I understand the want to definitely do this before we kick into the election cycle, because we all become like animals during the election cycle. Like we can't focus, can't do anything else. We just got to figure out how to get ourselves over the line, get our friends over the line, and you know it's definitely not good to any type of intricate legislation.
In terms of what's important for market structure, why is this bill important to you? What is going to make you, if you're going to sit in the room again for a number of hours and negotiate this?
Well, because I need to finish the project, right? Stablecoin is and Genius Act. Sorry, it's been a great job. We've been doing a lot of work to it, but we're not going to really fully be able to bring innovation and expand the crypto industry and technology in the United States unless we have both. And we need to set down exactly what the next, I wouldn't say 100 years, because we could always go back and change things, what the next 100 years is going to look like, so we can actually give some clarity to industry, so they know how to invest, where to invest, they know the rules of the road, they know what the parameters are of what is legal versus not legal, and for the consumers actually to know what are the recourses should things go wrong. If we don't do that, I think you're basically, it's like buying a car, but you don't have all four wheels, right? The engine will start, but it's not moving, right? So it's going to be significantly harder. I do get that. I think the one hope I have is I think what we saw from how we worked together on stablecoin, I think it's going to lay a very good pathway for us when it comes to market structure. And for a lot of the Senate Democrats that are voting with me, with Warner, with Alsobrooks, and with Gillibrand, the better experience we're giving them on stablecoin is going to make it easier for them, I think, to also support us on market structure. Because a lot of them are not going to fully understand market structure, but if they understand that the four senators worked in earnest with the Republicans, they got a good product out of it, and then we come back to them after negotiating market structure, and we tell them again, like, look, we worked hard, we got this as far as we can, it's a good end product. Again, I think we'll get those people to come back and support us and agree with us.
So what do you think could get in the way of market structure being passed? If nothing, that's a good answer.
Yeah. I mean, it's an issue of time more than anything else. Like this will pass with time. Now, if there's some kind of emergency that happens between now and then things get kind of bumped back. But that's not because it's market structure. That's because of everything else, right? If we have to work with, like you could do anything, pandemics, wars, you name it, financial meltdowns. These are the things that could happen that could kind of move our concentration away from it, but it wouldn't actually be that the product was bad in any way or the issue was bad. It's just that we had to do our focus on this. But that would be it. I think momentum is on the side for it to get done. Questionable about when, but I do think before the election season starts is very safe and probably more so earlier than that. But it's not the subject matter that's going to be the issue. It's just going to be if something else comes up.
So I think my last question for you is sort of what is your vision for the future of this technology, for the future of crypto policy? What is it that you're trying to achieve, and what is that future that you see?
Well, I mean, on the future side, I mean, just seeing crypto and blockchain kind of integrated into everyday life is going to be exciting to see. I think I'm young enough, 45, that I'm going to get to see a lot of the innovations that I'm seeing right now whenever I'm visiting companies, talking to companies. It's going to be really cool, and it's going to be revolutionary. You're going to have a lot of industries that are going to be really entirely changed. I mean, if you're, in the subscription business, I'd be really scared right now because, there's going to be a direct way for an artist to be able to go right to its, its fan base and be able to skip the middleman. I mean, that's crazy cool, right? So that's gonna be really good, and I'm really excited for it to be homegrown here in the United States, especially in Arizona. No, nobody. Fine. But that's going to be. It's like seeing like the advent of the internet and of social media again, right? And again, it's the United States that's leading it, right? And we're lucky lucky and in some ways, plan that we're doing it. But we need to make sure we hold it here. And then on the legislative side, I think it's going to be. It won't ever be, in terms of legislating, how we think about the financial markets, because financial markets are about regulating the flow of capital versus when I think about crypto, you're talking about information and technology, and it's going to have to be a whole new thinking that I think that we're not used to right now, and we have to really start wrapping our minds around it and get the staff that actually know. Luckily, I have a great staff; they're all back there. They're sick of also being in the negotiating room, but it's going to require a whole new approach to legislating when it comes to that, and it has to be, fairly responsive, because I think this is going to be something that's going to keep adapting, keep going through several cycles of evolution, and you're going to need to have, a government that is responsive enough to be helpful, to put in guardrails where needed. To potentially be backstops for mistakes that happen, when it comes to, making sure consumers get their money back, things of that nature. But you have to be we're going to have to be very, very nimble. The nimbler you are, the bigger danger you have is overregulation. So it's going to have to be someone that we're going to have to keep our eye on the ball for a while. For a good reason. It's going to be, I think, an important part of our economy.
Well, this has been a great conversation, and we really appreciate all of the work that you have done on behalf of the industry. So thank you.
Gracias. Thank you.